What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. So there are three major issues that come off the screen for me most of the times that I watch the Suns this season, but especially in that game last night. One, their stars struggling to handle ball pressure. They've had 43 turnovers in the last two games, including the Pacers game. They're actually the fifth worst team in the league at taking care of the basketball. I talked about this earlier, but again, Phoenix, I don't think that their lack of a point guard, so to speak, affects their ability to score. Because when they do get into the half-court setting and they do get one of their stars to their spot, whether it's Devin Booker getting ready to run a ball screen or a kind of face-up ISO at 18 feet, or it's Kevin Durant doing the same thing, or it's Bradley Beal, getting his kind of downhill ISOs that he goes to, where he's hitting a bunch of in and out dribbles, right? Regardless of where those spots are, when they get there, they're efficient. You don't have to look far to see the points per possession data and see that those guys can get quality shots when they get to those spots. But teams, what we've seen consistently throughout the year is aggressive defense towards those guys. That's the book is out. That's what the scouting report says. The scouting report says ball pressure the hell out of Phoenix. Just ball pressure them. And over the course of the game, you'll kind of wear them down physically. And one of the things that I've talked about is I talk a lot about the value of strength in basketball. And, we look at it with rebounding and we look at it with defense and holding your position and stuff. But strength is a big thing on the offensive end of the floor too. You want to know why Nikola Jokic always seems to kind of thrive in those rock fight environments? He's so damn big and strong that you can't really deny him the basketball. Joel Embiid's the only guy I've really ever seen do it. He's just so big and strong. He's going to be able to physically hold somebody off long enough to create a passing angle, right? In general, we used to do this drill when I was in college, my last year in college. We called it the tight space passing drill, and it was basically from the lane line to the corner, kind of up to where the block was, and then back to the sideline, a square just kind of there in the short corner. And we'd put three offensive players in there and two defensive players. And basically we would just apply great ball pressure on the ball with one guy, and then that other guy's kind of splitting the difference, but it's in such a small space that it's tough. And so it really comes down to fighting for position. The on-ball guy has a dude swiping at him and getting physical and being really aggressive. And so he has to be strong with the basketball to like space for him to see the floor. And then one of those other two guys has to fight for position to create a passing angle for the guy with the ball to actually make that pass. And we did it all the time because it was one of the drills that my coach, shout out Coach Jeff Rutter at Arizona Christian University, he kind of implemented that as a way to learn how to better take care of the basketball. Because one of the things that I consistently talk about is when you run into really good teams, they tend to be big and strong and athletic, right? And teams that are big and strong and athletic tend to be really good on defense. And really good, big, strong, athletic defensive teams tend to be very physically aggressive, and they tend to try to get up into the basketball and get up into passing lanes. No different than the Orlando Magic like we were talking about earlier, right? And so, one of the things is these are a lot of guys that are kind of used to operating from their spots, and these are a lot of guys that aren't particularly strong for their position. And so when teams bring really physical ball pressure, really physical ball denial, they can struggle to create openings. And you saw that. I think that's one of the most clear weaknesses in this team that the league knows about, and that the league is going into these games looking to exploit. Finesse is cool and all, and it's a huge part of player development. And God knows that I teach that to the kids as well when I'm coaching my high school team, right? But it all can go south when somebody punches you in the mouth, right? When somebody brings real physicality to the situation, finesse can't be your only move. You've got to be able to do both, right? And then again, even extending onto the defensive end of the floor, when you've got big, strong guys like a Nikola Jokic or Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero, Mo Wagner, bring in just this real kind of downhill verve to the situation. It's that strength that allows you to hold up in those situations. And so Phoenix is going to eventually run into a team in the playoffs that is big, strong, and can bring that certain physical imposition to the game. It's going to happen. They're going to have to find a way to handle it. Now, there are some solutions, right? one of the things you can do to combat ball pressure is like, don't have the guy bring it up against the best defensive player, right? Like find Paolo's man or Franz's man and have them bring the ball up the floor, right? Like have Eric Gordon or Grayson Allen bring the ball up the floor so that you're not going against Anthony Black, so that you're not going against Jonathan Isaac. Those are things that you can do, right? But the reality is they just have to be better. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal have to get better at handling those aggressive coverages, handling that ball pressure, handling that ball denial, because to put it simply, that's going to be what teams do in the postseason. If they get into a first-round series with a team, the other team is going to sit down and they're going to start talking about their advantages, and one of the first things they're going to look at is like, we got to get up into these guys 94 feet and just try to wear them down at the point of attack and try to force them into their worst tendencies. Number 2, the second biggest thing that stood out for me on the screen. Drew Eubanks probably can't play for you in a playoff series. Now, to be clear, Jusuf Nurkic was out in this particular game, but Drew Eubanks has been kind of their backup center for a lot this season. They've gone with a bunch of other guys as well. But he got his lunch eaten by Mo Wagner last night. Was really struggling with him on hard rolls to the basket, was getting beat on baseline crashes on the offensive glass. There was one where it was like a middle fourth quarter where Drew kind of like saw Mo Wagner coming from that left side corner, turned and like went to box him out, and Mo just like literally just ran him over. But like Drew just turns and starts complaining to the refs. But like one of the things there is like fighting for your position actually goes a long way there. Like if you don't really fight for your position there and Mo comes in, the ref's not going to want to reward you for not holding your ground, right? Unless you flop extravagantly, right? In which case you might get a call depending on what kind of ref you're dealing with, right? But like he wouldn't just, if you actually like sit there and fight and hold your ground, if Mo pushes through you, then you probably get an over the back call. But he just got manhandled by Mo all over the floor. You know, and again, like this is going to be an issue with them over the course of this playoff run as well, is what do you do about the center position? Like Jusuf Nurkic is going to hold up really well in certain matchups, but then there are going to be other matchups where it puts them in a predicament where they get attacked a lot in pick and roll, right? We've seen that throughout this season. So that center position is going to be something to keep an eye on. And it may come down to them having to do a lot more of the KD at the 5 than maybe they wanted to when it comes time for the postseason. And then number 3, the defensive commitment has to be part of their identity. It can't just be a fad that they do for a week or two. It's got to be something that they stick to long term. They had this 7-game winning streak. They defended. The defense has completely fallen apart since. Like, they were really sloppy against Orlando. They were bad in transition defense, not getting matched up. They were bad in their pick and roll coverages. Drew Eubanks was like atrocious in pick and roll. Their on-ball guys were bad in pick and roll. They were hugged up on shooters off the ball. Like Bradley Beal at one point was just watching them score in pick and roll while he's standing guarding Anthony Black in the corner, who's a 30%. I think a 33% corner three-point shooter, so like their off-ball stuff isn't good. They're getting beat on back cuts. They're getting beat on offensive rebound crashes. You know, like, and especially in a game like that last night, defense could be what helps you regain control because Orlando's offense isn't good. One of the ways that Phoenix could have fought through that mess was really lock in on defense, force Orlando into their worst tendencies, and look for transition opportunities and try to kind of beat Orlando to 2 spots before they can really load up on their stars, right? But like that just wasn't the thing. It was like as the offense was falling apart against Orlando, their defense was also falling apart. And that's how you end up with the 21-2 run as the game kind of flips on them like that. The bottom line is the Suns are top heavy. They have 3 awesome players, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker. And they have 2 solid role player guards, Eric Gordon and Grayson Allen, right? And then they have some flawed role players like Josh Okogie and Jusuf Nurkic who are really good at some things and really bad at others, right? And then it's like a big drop-off. Like the rest of the roster are mostly guys that would not even be in rotations for really good playoff teams around the league. And specifically, none of their top 5 guys on that roster, saying Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Eric Gordon, Grayson Allen, none of those top 5 guys other than KD can really inflict their physicality on the game, right? So what does that mean? They can't afford to not be sharp on the details, right? Like they're going to lose a lot of battles just because of their personnel, especially defensively, especially on the glass, right? Like that, some of that stuff is just kind of baked into the roster. So what you can't afford to do is also give up the plays that are that come from mistakes, right? This team does not have the margin for error to not be disciplined, to not be sharp, to not have good habits. And it's not something that they can do for 2 weeks and be fine. They need months. They need months of these habits built up to go into the playoffs and be ready to get to be ready to compete physically at that point, right? Like one of the things we talked about with Denver last year after the postseason, and where I had to admit I was wrong, is like they were a mediocre defense through most of the season, but they were huge. There was a physical imposition on the game that they were able to bring, and then they had good athlete defenders in KCP and Aaron Gordon that could take primary point of attack assignments, and so they actually became a good defense when they got into that postseason environment. Phoenix does not have that luxury. They have to be incredibly sharp. Every single guy on the roster, including their skill guys, has to be locked in on those details, and it's just something to keep an eye on over the course of the rest of the season. They will hemorrhage points in many phases of the game because of their physical limitations. They can't also be lazy. That cannot be a characteristic of this team.